Hey,
Belinda.
Belinda. Yeah. Hey, Belinda. Welcome to the family. My name's George, and I just want you to know I've spent the last 16 years of my life scouring the jungles of Costa Rica and getting 4 board certified surgeons on board because I care about your skin. And we're so committed to this and this and this. And we just wanted to say, welcome to the family. Here's a discount for another product. And Belinda's like, yeah, okay, cool. You don't care about me or my skin. Like, that has nothing to do with me.
Well, guys, welcome to the Levelin Up podcast. Want to welcome you guys on Facebook. Such a wonderful opportunity to have George Bryant here with us. He's the Lifehouse, man. I'm so stoked to have you on today. Just so you have a little bit of context of who George is, I'm going to share my screen momentarily so you can have a little bit of how awesome this guy is. I met him through my good friend Greg Kimball. And today we're going to be talking about 3 tips to building breakthrough customer journeys. And that's his expertise, but he is best known for how relationships beat algorithms model. And I think that's going to be so much fun. We're going to hear a little bit about that, but if you really want to deep dive, you got to go in with him because this is not just like something you can get in half an hour and understand the whole thing. He's got years, honestly, like over a decade of experience in this, and so excited to have some awesome opportunities to share with us today. And then he's also the host of the Mind of George show. If you love podcasts like this, guys, his is awesome. He's also a keynote speaker. So what a wonderful opportunity we have today to share some time, some heartbeats. Man, I'm so grateful to have you on today. So George, tell us a little bit more how you're feeling. Tell us about what's going on in your life. I'm so excited to have you.
Yeah, man. Thank you for the intro. Yeah, I feel old now because it's been like 15 years of doing this. And I was like, wait, am I one of those guys now? Like I'm
Yeah.
only 40, but like I've been in this for a minute. And I'm like, holy moly. So first I'm humbled to be here. I'll say this at the beginning. I normally say this at the end, but time is something we can't ever give back. And so I never take it lightly when people choose to spend it with me and you as well. So like just really from the bottom out, honored and humbled to be here. And truth be told, in what you said, I can change a lot in 30 to 45 minutes for people. And I recommend going deeper because we'll unpack all of this and get into it. But I think to answer the question of like what's going on in my life and what's up for me and all those different pieces, I think the most important thing is that we all go through seasons. And even in the world of business or marketing, whatever season you're in life, love is always the answer. Connection is always the answer. Caring about people will and always will be the answer. And it just so happens that that's a lot of what I talk about. But I'm truly, truly blessed. These fill my bucket to do. Like this is like my needle mover, like selfishly. Like I know everyone's like, oh, George is gonna teach us this. I'm like, I'm selfishly sucking in all of this because like this is how my bucket gets full. So I'm honored to be here.
Yeah, it's such a pleasure to have you on today. And one of the things I love about I've been kind of dabbling a little bit in your content. You are such a genuine person. Like you're just like, hey, this is who I am. This is how I live, and you don't shy away from being vulnerable. And I think that's a superpower that you have. And I'm so grateful to have you on today because like the first time that I met you, I was like, I just feel like I've known you for years, and it takes a skill set, guys. That is something that you have to develop that skill to be able to be like rumbling with vulnerability. And I definitely feel like you're able to do that in a way that's very genuine and attractive. So let's talk about maybe how do you sort of start with that skill set. You're like, hey, I know that I can become vulnerable. How do I step into that reality?
I didn't. I'm stoked. We're gonna start with tears on my side because I saw you framing this one and I'm like, here we go. Yep, we out here now. We out here now. It's a muscle, but it's also freedom.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, I don't talk about this often, but a lot of my career was built on people celebrating me for things, right? Like, oh, he's a New York Times bestselling author. He's #1 app in the world. He tied a world record. He did this. He did this. But nobody ever asked me why. And what a lot of people don't realize is those were byproducts of addictions. Those were not things that I set out to do. That was me hiding. That was me running from God, running from my life, and trying to avoid being in a relationship with the one person I'm guaranteed to spend the rest of my life with, which was me.
Yeah.
And vulnerability, authenticity, I think they're thrown around a ton all the time, but really at the end of the day, it's unapologetically loving yourself and sharing with no agenda,
Mm,
hoping and inspiring that somebody else can have a breakthrough based on you being present with them. And it's not something that comes with ease, or it didn't for me at least. I don't want to speak for anybody else. I've met a lot of people that were blessed that they never internalized any of their childhood or any of the things that happened, and they have this beautiful perspective. But for me, like, I care so much about people because I bled on people for 30 years when somebody else cut me, right? And we've heard that quote so many times, but it was never intentional, right? It's not like I woke up one day and I was like, oh, I'm gonna be disconnected, or I'm gonna make sure I always talk about myself, or I'm gonna make sure I like have a negative answer to what they say. But it was a byproduct of all these different circumstances and situations. And really, what it boiled down to was my inability to be in a relationship with myself. I couldn't stand it. And so then when I'd be in conversation, I'd be getting interviewed, right? The walls go up, and people used to celebrate me 10 years ago. Oh my God, you're so authentic, you're so vulnerable. I'm like, no, 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 no. That's the veil of authenticity. That's the authenticity I want you to see,
mm,
right? Like you go back and listen to podcasts of me 12 years ago, and I can tell you verbatim the first 10 minutes of every episode. And there's thousands of them. Like I've been over 10,000 shows. And I know the story so well because it was such a scripted thing for me, but because I used it, and some of the evidence in there was bigger than other people, like almost losing my legs, being sexually abused. Everyone's like, oh my God, he's being so vulnerable. I'm like, no, 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 no. Vulnerability is in the absence of words. It's being present with however you authentically feel. And I fell into my own trap. I would use that story and people would celebrate me. They'd be like, oh my God, you're so amazing. You're so strong. And then the camera would go off and I'd be self-loathing, self-harming, beating myself up, right? To the tune of like, that's not really who I was, because who I was scared. I was hurt, right? Like I was in pain. I was fearful, but I never wanted to project that. And that came down to my childhood and having to survive at a very young age. And then I joined the Marine Corps of all places, right? So, like, we'll never
yeah.
forget pain is weakness leaving the body, right? Like, you have no emotions. And now we live in a society where if you cry, you're bad and wrong. And I actually stay on the other side of it, right? Like, as a breathwork teacher, if it's coming up, it's coming out. And there was this thing that I just never allowed myself to feel. So what people saw was vulnerability and authenticity, but what it was actually was numb. It was just me trying to stay monotone and me trying to control everything that was there. And so in the short term, everyone's like, oh, he's so amazing. But in the long term, it did damage to both sides. It did damage to me, but it also did damage to the people that I was interacting with, that I was coaching, that I was speaking to. And I think it took, I say it, it's a come to Jesus moment. I've had many come to God moments as he's the forefront of everything in my life, but he wasn't always. It was me toe tapping around and running and figuring it out and like, like I can do this, and like, okay, like humble me some more. And but really what it took was losing everything. And I talk about this stuff so openly because if I can avoid somebody driving their car into a wall at 100 miles an hour, I will, because like I've done it, and I didn't do it once. I did it like 16 times, and I did it till there was no other choice but to surrender. But when I talk about surrender, when I talk about authenticity, it was really just surrendering to myself, like knowing that I'm perfect, whole, and complete, and that I'm not the play that I ran 3 years ago. I'm not the play that I ran 10 years ago, unless I turn around, pick up that same play and run it today, or I beat myself up in the process, right? And so the one thing that did this for me, and I'll share this very openly, is I went down to the jungle because everything was in shambles. My wife was 8 months pregnant with Branson. We were like 3 weeks away from bankruptcy. I had everything on paper. I had a million followers. I had a New York Times best-selling book. I had all the cars, all the houses. And the shaman, who was a very godly shaman, wouldn't let me sit with the medicine. And he's like, you can come back and see me when you have a purpose for your life. And I was like, great. So I start dropping F-bombs and I'm like, I'm gonna kill you. And like I was angry. Like I would never physically hurt anybody, but I used to lash out so much because of all the suppressed feelings and things that I'd stuffed down. And he's like, no, no, no. Come back when you can answer this question. He had me write on a piece of paper, what's your purpose in life? And it took 2 days and I didn't sleep. I am not proud of this, but I self-harmed. I used to get so angry and I never wanted to hurt anybody. So I used to hurt myself. I used to punch myself. I'd punch myself in the face because I never knew how to deal with the anger and rage, which is funny to talk about now because there's not an ounce of it left in my body.
Mhm.
But I surrendered, and one morning, the second morning I woke up, and it was like God wrote my pen for me. And all it wrote was to stand with structure in the face of resistance to create possibility. And those words, when I saw them, gave power to my whole life. Like it gave purpose to my whole life. Like, why else have I survived all this? Why else am I still here? Like, why else? But I realized that the only person fighting was me. I was fighting myself. Like I was fighting just accepting myself for who I was. And when I left there, he told me, and I will never forget this quote. He said, "Your biggest challenge is you've never been quiet enough to hear God's whispers." And that inspired
That's
me to do
awesome.
one of the hardest things that I've ever done in my life. And I went from having a million social media followers living on the internet. And I realized in that trip that I was using all my intimacy with everybody in the world and avoiding it with myself and my family. People on the internet felt closer to me than my family did. Like my wife didn't know me, but people and strangers on the internet did because that was where I hid. The easiest place to hide was in plain sight. And so, in typical fashion, when you go one way to one side, I was like, well, I'm going to go the other way to the other side. And so I literally deleted my social media, changed my phone number, changed my email, and stopped consuming all content for 2 years. No books, no music, no TV, no radio, no nothing. And I forced myself to sit in a stillness practice as much as possible. And it was torturous for a while until I got to the point where I was so sick and tired of being sick and tired and I couldn't consume anything. There was nowhere to hide. I couldn't post anything. I couldn't go share anything or couldn't go call anybody that I was like, huh, maybe I should create something for myself. Maybe I should really start like working on this game of myself. And I learned that the only time I lost in life is when I gave myself the illusion that stagnation existed. Because there's either progress or regression, there's either growth or death, there is no pause.
I
And I
love it.
had convinced myself and everybody else that I'd been through it all, but I was never going to attempt my life again because I'd attempted my life and overdosed and done all that stuff. But I was really lying to myself because I was doing it slowly. I wasn't living. I wasn't being present. I wasn't creating memories. I was basically checking a box until my time expired. Woohoo, boohoo me. And the culmination of all the work that I'd done over the years, personal development and all these different things just kind of hit me like a ton of bricks. And I genuinely realized that the only thing that was missing was me being very, very in love with myself. And it wasn't an overnight process. It was a 7 year process of just constantly choosing it, making my background on my phone a picture of me at 5 years old. Because every time I would be mean to myself, it was very hard to be mean to the 5 year old version of myself, especially after you have a child, right? And then taking it one step further and realizing that I needed accountability. And so I'm like, all right, every time I'm mean to myself, I'm going to open my phone, record a video of me talking out loud what I'm saying, and then I have to text it to 5 people I love. I worked that thing out pretty quick, bro. Like pretty quick, right? But what it really boiled down to is recognizing that the entire purpose of life in my world is to be useful.
Mhm.
It's to be present, it's to be heart-centered, and it's to be useful. And I had to come and get really honest that I wasn't being useful. I was more of a liability than I was an asset because I was a ticking time bomb. And there was no circumstance, there was nothing inside of me that was there. It was just a lack of grace and love and acceptance for myself, which now obviously I find through God. But it was a practice. And that was the piece that was missing the most. It was a daily commitment over and over and over again to be in my truth. And I ended up realizing that my truth was my sobriety. When I could own my story, when I could stand here in front of you and be like, oh my God, I didn't mean to say that. I just lied. I didn't carry any shame about it. I didn't carry any guilt about it. I was just like, oh, yeah, I'm sorry. I made a mistake. And it started to just become this muscle that I just started flexing over and over. And there was one particular moment, and I was on my book tour, New York Times bestselling book tour, and I thank my now ex-wife, who's my best friend to pieces. We still live together, and I was about to go out on stage, and I was giving a talk, and I'll remember this like it was yesterday: how to use food to create breakthrough results in your life. And I was sharing 3 tips because you practice eating 3 times a day. And so you can practice these things. And so right before I go out, she looks me dead in the eye in the hotel room and she's like, "Are you really going to go lie to them all again?" And I knew exactly what she meant because I was purging that morning. I was bulimic still. I was struggling with these things. And so I walked out on that stage and I had every fear you could imagine, right? Like I was wearing a blue and white pinstripe shirt. And by the time I got on stage, it was purple. And I mean, it was drenched. I could have wrung it out in sweat, right? And I literally was like shaking and shivering. And my brain was like, my whole career is going to end. Everyone's going to leave. I'm going to lose my contract. I'm going to lose all these different things. And I started that talk and I said, "I'm sorry. I've been lying to all of you." And then everybody who was looking at their phones looked up. Everybody was standing up, sat down. And I just basically, for 5 minutes, did a massive, massive confession of like, this is a lie. This is a lie. This is a lie. This is how I feel. Boom, boom, boom. And then I was empty and I didn't even know what to do. I literally just stood there and I'm getting paid to keynote. And I just stood there in silence. And then someone's like, "Are you going to give us your talk?" And I was like, "Huh?" And then I went and proceeded and gave my talk. And everybody came up to me and they thanked me for saying things that they would never say, for owning my story. And it kind of gave me a taste of what me loving myself would do, because that was the first time I was ever honest with myself.
Mhm.
And from that day, I've not let go of it ever since. But it's something I practice like wholeheartedly because anything else for me feels like manipulation. If you and I are in a conversation and we're having one and I have a thought or a belief about myself or something coming up, I'm not really being present with you. So anything I say is just manipulating the situation. And so it just became this level of integrity for me that I realized that it's not really for anybody else but me, but it's for me to sleep at night and for me to love myself and for me to accept myself. And it just so happens that when you do that, the other receiving party in those conversations or in those talks feel empowered to do the same. And it's two equal people meeting each other where they are. And so that's how it all started. And it's become something I haven't gotten off of since.
And I'm so grateful for you to open up in that way, because every single one of us, we're hypocrites at times. Every single time. Like there are times when like I'm doing a training, I was like, man, I don't want to be here. Why is that? And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes I'll bring it up with the audience and they'll be like, oh, that's a way you can connect with someone because you're just being present. And then
Yeah.
sometimes I even realized this. Like I was doing a training with Dino Watt, and I was like, man, I was very external. And for like 2 minutes of this, I had my kid crying in the other room, so I muted my thing while he was answering, and then my other daughter went and got him quieted down, and I unmuted myself. And I was like, why did I mute myself? What was it about that brought me shame or frustration? Or I was like, am I increasing the connection with the audience, or am I trying to disconnect and say, hey, look, my life's perfect. It's not an issue. Like, no, we all have imperfections, and sometimes those imperfections allow us to be motivated to change.
They're what make us who we are, right?
Exactly.
Like here's the thing. My son is 7, right? And he's luckily grown up in this world to the point where he's a better coach than I am. Even like Jamie, who's on the call, has seen him come into like Zoom calls with us and things like that. But he's so used to having entrepreneurs at the house, like so used to it, right? But like that thing that you just talked about is so real for me that, people forget that the internet is not a different world. It just speeds up the process of the real world, right? And it allows a little bit of like posturing per se. Like you can pick and show whatever you want to show and you can just share the highlight reel. But pre the internet, this was normal. Like when we didn't have cell phones, like we'd call people on the house phone, we'd see them in person, and like you can't hide a lot of these things. And really, whether it's perfection or not wanting to be judged or whatever, it's like this monotone line that everybody wants to live. Like I just want it to be easy and coast. And Branson will hear somebody say that at my house, and he'll walk over and be like, "Can I have a piece of paper?" And they're like, "Yeah." And he'll draw a flat line on the paper, and he's like, "I have a question." And they're like, "Yeah." And he's like, "If this is your heartbeat, what would it mean?" They're like, "Well, it would mean I'm dead." And he's like, "Awesome." And then he'll draw a heartbeat. And he's like, "And if this was your heartbeat, what would it mean?" And they're like, "Well, I'm alive." And he's like, "Well, that's how your emotion's supposed to be, because that's what it means to be alive." And I'm like, "I'm done. I'm out." Like, I don't have anything else to add to that. Like the 7-year-old just like dropped a keynote on us that like blows our mind, right? And I never taught him that. I've never taught that. I use it now, but God put that on his heart and brought that to me one day, either a YouTube short he saw or one, who knows? And I'm like, but really, and this is what's so nuts because I geek out about this stuff as well. A company in Germany just did a study, and this is the benefit of AI. They were able to use AI and hook up, and they had 25,000 participants in this where they can understand human emotion and how it's received in the body through sensors and AI. And they used something called Spain, Spane, and it's like a scale of emotions. And they figured out, and this has been misquoted all over TikTok, but it's either 400 or 4,000, that authenticity is the most resonant frequency for human beings. And it is either 400, minimum of 400 times more powerful than love. Authenticity. But what authenticity is full expression in every moment, right? Like that's our freedom. And for me, everything else is prison, right? Like when my son runs in here, he's homesick today. I told you right when we started. If he runs in, I'm like, hey, 1 second. And then like we have our codes and everything else. But if something's needed, like that's it, right? Like I've been in the middle of keynotes. And when I'm screen sharing my iPad, there's only a few people who can text me. It's my CEO, my ex-wife, and my son. And if a text comes through from my son in the middle of a keynote and I see it on my iPad and it's important, I stop the keynote, but I don't tell him I'm stopping. I just look down and handle it. And then I clean it up after because, like, that's my priority. Like, that's the reason I'm doing all of this is for him. Like,
Yeah.
I don't, like, he doesn't want me on this stage. He wants me back in Montana playing Roblox, cuddling on the couch, or chasing the horses in the pasture, right? So, I think for everybody, it's like, I don't know where we decided that social media or the internet or the world could write a permission slip or a detention slip for us that says like we can't be ourselves, like we can't live our lives, like we can't feel our feelings. But it's the number one thing that's missing, and it's why people don't trust each other. It's like because you can tell, like and for the women listening or watching, way before the dudes do. You're like a horse. You can sense that thing from like 100 yards away. You're like, nope,
Yeah,
that dude
guys
ain't
have to
being
be like
honest.
fingers on the pulse, and women are just like, I can see this from a mile away. Like,
Oh, bro,
absolutely.
and I'll say this, everybody, and the dudes aren't gonna like me for this. Women are never wrong. Intuitively, they are never wrong. That's how the feminine works. They are plugged into feelings, like 100%.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of times for us too that what ends up happening is that we end up unaware of it, not because we choose to be, right? One of my mentors, Simon Bowen, who I love to pieces, he says, nobody chooses to self-sabotage. We accidentally behave our way into it, right? And really what happens is our environments, our days, like we go out into the world and you pick up these stories from other people that you're either caught or taught, and it actually just makes you running down this linear path, right? And it's a pattern interrupt or something that breaks checks you that forces you to be like, wait, hold on, I wasn't present. Like it happens to me 100 times a day. Where like I'll tell my son it's 5 minutes and then I'm sucked into some rabbit hole for like an hour and he's like, Daddy, and I'm like, oh my God. But in that moment, I have the ability to clean it up. I'm like, oh my God, you're so right. I'm going to put my phone down. Let's go do this. Next time I'll do this. But it does require a sense of self to be willing to be seen in that, because if not, we're taking it as bad and wrong, but really it's an invitation to have what we wanted to have,
Mm.
presence, connectedness, and pieces. And I feel like the more everybody practices it, the more empowered everybody is around, but also the more solid of ground everybody's standing on. Because
Yeah.
that's why everybody has all this trepidation. Like you see marketing changing, business changing. And I was like, but there's only one thing missing, and it's always been the same, and it's safety. You can't trust somebody that you don't know, right? Like you go into a restaurant or you go into a car dealership, you go anywhere and you can be in a buying process. And the moment your body shifts to unsafe, you're out. It's game over, right? And there's only one way to feel safe, and it's to acknowledge whatever that thing is or bring it back into integrity or at least acknowledge its existence. And so, like, here's another easy one. And I do this when I walk into corporate clients all the time, right? Like I'll walk in, they're like, oh my God, like, good morning. How's your day? And they're like, great. I'm like, why are you lying to me? And
Ooh.
they're like, ooh, what do you mean? How's yours? I'm like, quite frankly, it was horrible. Like I almost got rear-ended. I spilled my coffee, but I'm so grateful to be here and I'm choosing happiness. And they're like, well, actually, and I'm like, yeah, but like how many times we just flex this muscle
Mm.
And we're conditioning our bodies, our brains, our behaviors to default to those things rather than like just being authentic in the moment. Like, what's the worst that happens? You shed a tear, take a breath, and the person's like, "Are you good?" I'm like, "I'm great. I just need to let it out." Right? Like, and it's just this simple invitation. And I think the hardest thing for me is that I spent 15 years thinking it was harder, like
Mm.
thinking that it had to be harder. And one of the things that I said to myself that people love is your level of healing never has to match your level of trauma, right? And so there can be, and this has been studied, but a human body can only feel an emotion for 90 seconds. Like its full felt emotion is 90 seconds. The rest of it is the stories that we're playing in our reticular activating system with episodic memory and all the muscles that are literally digging those neural pathways in. But the emotion itself is only felt for about 90 seconds. The rest of it is the loop that we have running, right? And so then we look at the world we live in now, where prior to the Industrial Revolution or even the internet or Uber Eats or anything, no matter how you felt, you still had to get up and move. You had to get up and do things. Well, we're also the only mammal that doesn't have a natural drainage for our lymphatic system, right? Like if you see an antelope almost get eaten by a lion and it makes it before it eats grass, the first thing it does is shake its body and then it goes back to eating grass like nothing ever happened. We as human beings, the only mechanism we have is movement. And it's the one thing that when we start to stack stuff on, what do we not do? Move. Because we just scroll, we click, we order food, we stay in the house, and we literally just stack it on top of ourselves. But it's really just a muscle of releasing things and going through the experience, right? And like everybody can think of a moment where they're having a hard day, like, oh, I can't do this, I can't do this. Screw it. I'm just going for a walk. And then 5 minutes into the walk, they have a tear and then nothing but clarity opens up, right? Or they're like, I'm not going to the gym. I can't, I can't, I can't. And then they go. And then 7 minutes in, they're like, oh my God, I can't believe I wasn't going to come, right? And I overcomplicated this for so many years. Like, there has to be another answer. There has to be another answer. No, we're mammals. We're just biological creatures created by God, in my opinion, right? But like, we're given the tools, we're given the ability. But if you just sit still and stagnate, we just keep creating these stories. And my friend Jim Quick says this better than everybody. And he's like, what are you programming the supercomputer that runs your life? And then why are you wondering what results you're getting or not getting?
Mm.
Because it's not a lack of action. It's all the thoughts that we're digging in over and over and over and ruminating on them that prevent anything else from happening.
So George, if it's all right, I'm going to share a story that
Of course, it's all right. It's
I
your
had
podcast, bro.
when I was a teacher. I had this little Dumbo, right?
Mm.
And I had this idea that I was like, I'm just going to play a joke on my students and see if they even notice this. So I had this overhead projector, right? And I took this little stuffed Dumbo and I stuck it up there and I didn't address it the whole class. But every once in a while you have a student, they're like, why is Dumbo up there? And as soon as I had two or three students looking up, then I was like, guys, are you really going to address the elephant in the room? And it was such a great like breaker of like some of the tension. And in reality, when we're willing to address those elephants in the room, not just like the physical stuff elephant, but the reality of that, sometimes life is tough. It kicks you in the balls and it
Yeah.
hurts. And you have to deal with things that are traumatic or dramatic. And when you address it, you're saying, now I can actually solve something. But if you're always repressing it, or you're like, oh, I'm gonna go do something else, or I'm gonna push it away, or I'm gonna do something that could potentially help me, but they're not actually directed to finishing the problem and fixing it, especially with relationships,
Oh,
just
yes.
ruins the whole atmosphere. So let's talk about customer journey. Let's talk
Let's
about
do it.
how you have been able to craft this relationship to algorithm model. I'm so interested in these three secrets that you have for us. What are ways we can, for whether you're a beginner or like
Yeah.
really far down this path,
Well,
what are these
since
three
we're
secrets to
since
customer
we're
journey?
really deep into the brain and into the
Yeah.
body and into love, I'll give context for these. And also, there's one analogy I'll give to support your story because the one thing that you just acknowledged was stuffing it down and putting it away and pretending it's not there. And I was taught this exercise back when I was a personal development coach, and it's absolutely life changing, but it's called the stinky fish. And if you think about it, if we go to the store right now and buy a salmon, or I'm in Montana, right? We get like a lake trout and we go into the car, we put it on the floor of the passenger side, and we hit the gas really hard, it slides under the seat and we forget about it. Tomorrow, when we go out to the car, it's going to smell, right? And it'll smell like, okay, got it. And you can take it out and the smell won't be there. A week later, the smell is like permeating. And a month later, it's permanent and you have to completely destroy the car because as long as that thing stays under the seat, it just continually rots. And
Yeah.
that's the exact thing that happens when you push things down and you push them out is that they actually get harder and harder to remove because
Yeah.
they're getting deeper and deeper endowed. And so the goal is when you find them to remove them instantly. Because if you don't acknowledge their existence, right? It's the same thing when I use this to teach with like a check engine light in a car, right? Like if the check engine light in your car comes on, that's normal. And the only time it's dangerous is if you don't look at what it says, because it could either say your windshield wiper fluid is low or you're out of oil, your engine's going to seize. And the only time you lose is if you don't check it and you keep driving. Because if you keep driving and your engine oil is low, well, now you've just destroyed your engine. If you check it, you can pull over. If you check it and it's just windshield wiper fluid, you're like, I can keep driving, but we have to look at them. And it's
Yeah.
that ability that people don't look that causes the most pain. Because looking is, of course, like could feel like the hardest thing. But I even have a kid's book from Branson, Bear Through the Woods. Can't go over it, can't go around it, can't go under it. You got to go through it, right?
Sure.
And so, like, it's on the other side of every one of those things that we get the breakthroughs, that we get the clarity, that we get the results that we're looking for. And it's only our brains that make them hard. And it's not because it's fearful, it's because it's new. We
Yeah.
make up these stories about the unknown, and so we never look, but eventually you have to look. And what happens is most time people get forced into looking and it causes too much collateral damage. And so we create permanent undesirable results based on temporary feelings. And then we just dig that hole deeper and deeper and deeper. And so we'll transition this to customer journey. And I like to teach these things through inversion theory because when we think about a customer journey, what a customer journey really is us designing a series of steps to get somebody to their goal or closer to their goal with them being the hero of their own journey, not us being the hero of their own journey,
Right.
right? Our job is not to hand them a fish, it's to teach them how to fish, but we accidentally, and I say this intentionally to everybody, nobody intentionally does these. It's accidental because we don't bring awareness to them or we check the wrong boxes, right? So when I teach these, I call them the triangle of death, right? And my son has aptly renamed it to the triangle of poop. And he now makes me draw a poop emoji in the middle of it. And he gave me a poop emoji pillow to bring with me every time I speak about it. Because no matter what, if you make these mistakes, you're just going to keep creating more and more poop. It doesn't smell good at all, right? And
Yeah.
so when we think about a customer journey, we also have to understand that like nobody's coming to buy a supplement because they want to take a supplement. They're buying a supplement because it's a bridge to an after state, right? They're
Yeah.
getting coaching because they want to be a different person, right? So you have to understand that it's never about the product or service. It's always about the journey, the experience, because that is just a stepping stone to get something in their life, whether they want more money, they want more clients, they want a better body, they want to be writing emails better, they want to learn customer journey better. Whatever the case is, it's just a bridge. And so that's important to understand because when we think about a customer journey, every single decision that a human being makes is an emotional based decision.
Yeah.
Every person you follow on Instagram, you're choosing based on emotion and you're choosing based on, do I feel safe? Do I feel aligned with this person? When you walk into a store and you're window shopping and you pick it up, you put it down, you pick it up, you put it down, you're not looking at the features and benefits. You're collecting evidence to see if you feel safe enough to make this decision and justify the purchase, right? So every single decision is an emotional based decision. So underneath customer journey is really human relationships, right? Like I even say, if you even say the word marketing, just cross it off and write the word relationship because that's what you're doing at scale. You're building monogamous relationships at scale with people. And so even these mistakes, they are deep rooted principles of what gets in the way, no matter what platform it's on. Could be when you meet somebody at a conference, could be when they give you their email, could be when they give you their credit card. But these are the three mistakes that everybody makes, myself included, sometimes still, that get in the way of somebody getting results. And I've scaled a lot of companies. I've scaled 2 to 1 billion, of over 100 into 9, 10 figures, right? So like I'm speaking about experience here. Scale comes from retention, not acquisition.
Mm.
Retention comes from somebody getting results or closer to them with what was promised. And these are the mistakes that get in the way of somebody doing them. So, mistake number one, we call the zone of doubt. And if you're listening to this or watching this, don't try to write it down, but this is my dictionary definition. The zone of doubt is the space between the opt in, exchange of information, or credit card purchase where the dopamine is wearing off. The longer that zone exists, the faster the undercurrent of your customer or potential customers' anxieties and doubts take over, deteriorating both of your chances of success. So I'll give you a tangible example. If you're listening to this or watching this and you've ever bought a digital product on the internet and been told it's going to be in your inbox, and then you go to your inbox and it's not there, what feeling do you get in your body? Is it,
Mm.
oh, I'm so excited to use this product? Or is now all of a sudden this is the first piece of evidence that this was a bad decision and I feel unsafe?
Mm.
When somebody tells you, hey, shoot me a text and I'll respond to you in the next 24 hours, and they don't hear from you for 48 to 72 hours, the feeling in their body is not, oh, I'm so excited to hear from Brighton. It's like, why isn't Brighton message me? Why is he not getting back to me? Was this the right move? Because we don't feel safe. So the zone of doubt is anywhere where we're exchanging information with people. Let's think about going to conferences.
Yeah.
Oh, give me your business card. Give me your business card. Give me your business card. Oh, yeah, I'll shoot you an email this week. And then you find the pile 2 months later. Well, we forget that when you don't follow up once you've made a contract or a conversation with somebody, it isn't neutral. It's actually negative in the bank of experience. And as of 2023, 93% of marketing is word of mouth, which means that if you and I met at a conference and I was like, oh my God, it was so exciting to meet you, I'm going to shoot you an email this week, and you don't hear from me, you might not follow up. But in 6 weeks, when you're at a conference and someone's like, have you ever heard of George Bryant? There's only one thing you can say.
He didn't follow up. Right.
He didn't follow up. No matter what our experience was, no matter what I did or said, that's the only thing that you can say, because humans only share for one of five reasons: humor, credibility, education, social status, or controversy.
Mm.
And one of the things I like to tell people is if you don't give them something good to say, you will not like what they say. Because in the absence of something good, they make up their own stories. And so the zone of doubt is the first mistake. We see this all the time. Somebody buys a program. The first thing they get is a confirmation page telling them how much money they spent, and then they don't hear from you. They shoot you a DM on Instagram because you told them to, and then you don't respond to them. And then we wonder why they don't come back. It also applies to comments. I get people all the time like, nobody comments on my stuff anymore. And I'm like, have you ever responded? And they're like, no. And I was like, you condition that behavior out of them. How many times have you gone to comment on somebody's stuff and then kept commenting when they didn't respond? And they're like, oh, crap. So all of those are the zones of doubt. That is the number one killer of most businesses, specifically consulting, coaching, sales, all of those buckets. That's
Yeah.
where everybody loses the game. So that's number one, the zone of doubt. Number two is called the inverse journey. And the inverse journey is when there's any touch point with a customer where it's about you instead of them or their results.
Ooh, okay.
And so when I say this to people and I have you write it down, the most important thing to write down is your customers or potential customers' results will tell them everything they need to know about you.
I love that.
If you've already gotten their information, if they've already reached out, they already had enough evidence to feel safe. Anything past that point comes off as perceived narcissism. Think about this in like the supplement space. You go buy a supplement from a dude, the first email you get is, oh my God, you're going to have a six pack just like me. Look how easy this is for me. Look how great this is for me. Look how awesome I am. Instead of, wow, how's it feel to already have a six pack and you haven't even started and we've shipped your product? Truth is, you're ahead of 99% of the population because you're here. We're going to spend the next 30 days helping you get the most out of this product to get the results that you're looking for, right? We see this posturing, and that posturing comes from a lack of confidence. But really, when we're posturing, we're pushing people away. We're actually giving them more evidence that they can achieve the thing that they just came to us to achieve. Ladies see this in skincare all the time, and no woman has ever bought a skincare product without doing her due diligence, ever. No one has ever blindly bought one. And so they literally spend sometime between a week and 30 days in this process. They choose the product, then they get an email that goes something like, what's your wife's name? Belinda?
Belinda.
Yeah. Hey, Belinda. Welcome to the family. My name's George, and I just want you to know I've spent the last 16 years of my life scouring the jungles of Costa Rica and getting 4 board certified surgeons on board because I care about your skin. And we're so committed to this and this and this. And we just wanted to say, welcome to the family. Here's a discount for another product. And Belinda's like, yeah, okay, cool. You don't care about me or my skin. Like, that has nothing to do with me. But the inverse is, hey, Belinda, how's it feel to have healthier hair, skin, and nails already, and we haven't even shipped your product? Truth is, in my expertise, we've been scouring the jungles and found these things, but they only work if they work for you. And our job isn't to sell you a product, it's to help you have healthier hair, skin, and nails, even if you don't use our product. So, we're going to spend the next couple of days teaching you how to get the most out of it, giving you some tips and tricks. And if you need anything, you can hit reply to this email and let us know. But I just want to say, welcome to the family.
Yeah.
That's it,
Keeping
right?
her at the focus, at the hero's journey. Like,
Every
and
single
you're
time.
you're being a guide, you're not being the hero. And that's so important.
Exactly, exactly. And so that's the second mistake, which is the inverse journey. And then the third mistake, and we all commit this mistake, myself included. I'm doing it to people right now. This mistake we call the drown the journey. I used to call it the old George special because I'm the one who did it the most. But we've all seen this and it's prevalent in the digital marketing community and in digital products, digital courses, consulting, selling, buying, any of those things. And that's the I laugh before I even say it. Hey, Brigham, welcome to the family. I'm so glad that you bought this product. I need you to whitelist this email, watch these 3 videos, fill out this application form, and do these 6 other things, and I'll see you on a call in 4 days.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Right? And then they show up to the call, and then they get gaslit for not doing it, even though there was no way for them to do it. And we forget that just because you're selling something doesn't mean somebody isn't in a carpool lane sitting
Mm.
on their bed with their kid who's sick coming in, right? And so one of the things that I want everybody to understand is that your message is only as effective as the recipient's ability to hear it, understand it, and implement it without you. Your message is
So
only as effective as the recipient's ability to hear it, understand it, and implement it without you. Or else you're conditioning codependency and you're creating what Jonah Berger calls reactance,
yeah.
which the moment they literally just went through a buying process, knowing that as of this time, most people are moving away from pain. They're not moving towards pleasure anymore, right? It's like, I have a problem in my life, I have a problem in my life. So they've been in a buying cycle collecting evidence. Is this the right decision? Okay, I'm finally going to do this. I'm going to buy this thing. And then the first thing they get is overwhelming, so they can't. So do you think they take action on that email or that step? No, they open it, they close it, and they're like, oh my God, it's too much. Then tomorrow they get another one, and each one of those makes them feel further and further and further and further behind until they do that lovely thing called ask for a refund or say this doesn't work, when in actuality, it doesn't. But if I give the example of like a client's coming to lose 100 pounds and I have 12 months to support 2 clients, client A walks in the door and I'm like, oh my God, congratulations. I'm so stoked you want to lose 100 pounds. Here's your workouts, your meal plans, your supplements, your gym membership, and a camera. I'll see you in 12 months. And then client B comes in. I say, dude, holy moly, way to celebrate. All I need you to do is drink 16 ounces of water when you wake up tomorrow morning and come watch this 10-minute video with me where we're just going to go for a walk and do this bite by bite. And I do that every day for 6 months. Which one loses the weight?
The one that actually takes the water
Client
and
B.
watching the 10-minute video. Because
Client B.
bite size, right? It's client B.
It has to be. But if we think about the internet and what mistakes people have made, if you walked into a gym right now, they wouldn't let you walk in and just train, even if you'd never been there and just wanted to guest pass. They'd ask you, have you ever been here before? Do you know how to use the equipment? Oh, let me give you a tour of the gym. Let me show you where the showers are. We never blindly drop people in, but yet we do it to people on the internet all the time. And we wonder why they don't get results
Mm.
because they are not where we are. We forget how far removed somebody is from our after state when they're in their before state. It feels like one step, but it's not because they're in a place of pain and we're in a place of teaching them how to get out of pain or selling them a product that gets them out of pain. And so instead of taking the time to realize that the relationship doesn't begin until somebody gives you their information, doesn't end. It's like getting married to somebody, then moving out the night you get married on your honeymoon and relegating your marriage to automated text messages once a week that are overwhelming. What are your chances of success? They're not.
Zero.
When somebody gives you their email, gives you their contact info, or gives you their credit card, they're saying, I'm interested in dating you and being in a relationship with you so that you can help me achieve these things. But we'll spend 90 days courting somebody and then drop them one email and be like, good luck. And then we told them this whole time we cared about them. And then we wonder why the only thing they can say is negative. And so those are the three biggest mistakes that everybody makes with customer journey: Instagram DMs, Facebook comments, meeting people at conferences, getting off Zoom calls, like everywhere, all the time. Get a client on a sales call. I'm like, oh my God, this is amazing. Yeah, I'm going to send you a 48-page proposal. Let me know how it goes. And they're like, what? Right? Like, you have to understand that our job is to translate, and our job is to translate in a way that they can understand it and they can implement it. Because underneath it, if we don't, what we're doing is making people feel unsafe. And the moment we make them feel unsafe, the reticular activating system and the reactance goes up. And then every touch point that follows is more evidence to dig them in deeper, not to move them forward. So then the more we try to justify or we throw on their plate, we actually push them further and further away without addressing the elephant in the room, to tie it into what you said earlier.
So good. That's so good because if we keep it simple, honestly, like keeping it simple so they can actually do what we ask them to do. They get a result, they build more trust, they now like us a little bit more. You relieved a little bit of pain. Now they're like, well, what's the next step?
Yep.
And then they have that next step and then they're making progress rather than here's step 1 through 30, finish the 30th step and then I'll talk to you for the first time. Like that
Yeah. And
doesn't work.
this should be required reading for everybody. Jonah Berger's book, The Catalyst, because he breaks this down in the chapter called Distance. So if anybody is like, oh my God, like this point alone, I'm going to skip the line for you. And I'm also going to open a loop that makes you buy and read the book. So just go to the chapter on distance or use the lovely internet and find it. But I would buy that book. I've read it 100 times. But in Distance, how Jonah Berger breaks this down is, if you think about the lens of a football field, right? We're standing at the end zone on the far side and our customer's in the first end zone, right? And we're like, hey, I got you. Come all the way over here, right? But we forget that they're in a place of pain, or they already have endowment to their current situation. They have uncertainty. They have plenty of evidence to support that it won't work. And so they can only see to the 5 yard line. They can't see over here yet.
Yeah.
But once you get them to the 5 yard line, their purview opens up to the 20 yard line because they took that step and now they have evidence in a positive direction that something's different. Once they get to the 20, they can see to the 50. Once they get to the 50, they can see to the end zone. But no time in the beginning can they go and see from here to here. And it's actually based on human psychology, right? And the more pain somebody is in, the less far they can see, like the shorter their purview and their lens because of the constraint and the resistance that's happening in their life. And so our job is to be able to create that. But I also say this to people with kids. If any of you have kids that have ever been over the age of 5 or 6, you are better at building customer journeys than anybody that hires me. Because if you think about it, and I use Branson as an example all the time, but every morning when we wake up, he wakes up with me sometime between 6 and 6:15, and we have to leave the house at 7:45. And I'm like, all right, parents, what are my chances of success if I see him at 6:15? And I'm like, all right, bro, I need you to brush your hair, brush your teeth, eat your breakfast, pack your backpack, put your clothes on, meet me at the door at 7:45. Zero, zero. But if when we wake up at 6:15, I'm like, hey, bro, normal morning. We got to brush our hair, brush our teeth, do all that. All I want you to do right now is brush your hair and get dressed and meet me upstairs with breakfast. And then he comes and eats breakfast, and I can get him to breakfast. And then when he's done with breakfast, I'm like, hey, now that you're done with breakfast, I want you to go brush your teeth and then pack your backpack and then come see me so we can fill your water bottle. And then he goes and does that. I'm like, hey, fill your water bottle, put it in your bag and put it by the door. And then you can go play till we're done. Somehow I magically get out the door on time every day.
Yeah.
That's
And
exactly what a customer journey is.
that's something that you can systemize by saying, well, this didn't work yesterday, this worked yesterday. Now I need to take the things that didn't work. Now, how do I help my kid get from point A to point B
A
and then
thousand
point B to
percent.
point C? And it's just iterations and recognizing those tiny little tweaks. Nobody has a customer journey that's perfect the first time. I
No,
why people think
because
that.
because there are none. They are none. The only ones that are perfect are the ones that put them up and are willing to change them. Because like you think at your friendship, you look at your marriage. Your marriage has evolved so much since you've been married. And if you did your marriage the same way you did when you got married, you wouldn't be married anymore.
For
right?
sure.
And so the world changes, the market changes, we change as people, but it's about protecting the outcomes, not about the rigidity of like, oh, here's my 77 steps to go automate this relationship that I'm afraid to be in. Well, then great, go out of business because
Yeah.
you just told them you'd help them get a result, not that you'd give them some cookie cutter approach that doesn't work and doesn't get the result that actually causes pain for both of you, right? And people forget about this all the time, but it's why people have to rebuild offers and relaunch products and do this because you can only burn a bridge once before it can never be rebuilt again, right? And one of my favorite quotes that my ex-wife gave me, and she's like, you can nail a nail into a fence, but when you pull the nail out, the hole's still there.
Mm.
That's how the human body recognizes these things. That's how it remembers these things. And so every single time somebody's having a negative experience, they're remembering that experience. And it's not just this one isolated thing when you now think about the internet and how connected we are. If this was at like a brick and mortar store, you might have only seen somebody once a week, but now they can see you 77 times in one day. And that's 800 times over a week. That every time they see you pass that hole, it's more evidence that the hole gets bigger and bigger because it's on hollow ground. And it's not because we tried, it's because we didn't think through and understand that really a customer journey is managing the conversation to allow somebody to progress. And then people are like, oh, I automate these. Half of my customer journeys aren't automated. I do them via text message. I just know where people are and I move them to that next milestone. I move them to that next milestone because those are the milestones that people have to follow to get through a marathon, to get through an ultra marathon, right? It's 1 mile at a time, not 100 miles at once.
I love that. And that keeps it simple for us. What's the
Yes.
next step? Recognizing that you overwhelm them, then nothing's going to happen.
Yes.
I love that. That's very actionable. And what if we can have this last question? What
Yeah.
was a question that I didn't ask you that you wish that I had?
No one's ever asked me that question before. That's a really good question. What's a question that I wished you asked that you didn't ask? I can't think of one for a question, but I can think of something that I'd like to say,
Go ahead.
if that's okay.
That's perfect.
Your business has a purpose, and your bank account balance is never going to be on your headstone. And realizing and recognizing that the results that you create in your business are a byproduct of the intentionality and integrity of your inputs, not the results themselves. You'll make $1 million when you add $1 million of value or $1 million of results for somebody, but you'll never make it when you set out to try to make $1 million because it's transactional in nature in the get-go. And I've tried to share people this and show people this, but even at like some of the big companies, like the companies I scaled to 1 billion, one of them went from 1 million a month to 2 million a day in 18 months. And the only thing I did was wrote 30 emails that cared about the person and helped them get better results and told them they didn't need our product. We get to be honest with people, we get to care about people, and we get to help people because helping people is what this is all about. It's the reason entrepreneurship is the greatest thing in the world because entrepreneurship is what's going to bring love back into the world. It's not going to happen from the top down, it's going to happen from the bottom up. But you don't have a business and you don't have anything of value to offer if nobody gets results and you ever think it's anything more than getting people's results. But it's not about getting them perfect results. Just because everybody wants to lose 100 pounds doesn't mean they're going to. Some might lose 10, some might lose 12, some might lose 80, and some might lose 140. Our job is not perfection, it's progress. Les Brown said it better than everybody. Practice makes, everyone screams perfect. He's like, wrong. Progress. Practice makes progress. The reason we exist is to make progress, but we also have to understand when we're in the lens of business, the progress isn't just for our customers. Every time we move them, we get moved too.
Mm.
And we have to reinvent. We have to step up to that next level. We have to create that next outcome and that next result because there is no finish line. And I laugh for people. Happiness isn't mentioned once in the Bible. Being useful is,
Mm.
right? Like I'll retire when I don't have a heartbeat anymore. Because other than that, it's about doing this for the right reasons. Because if you don't truly love what you do, if you don't care about what you do, if you wouldn't do what you do if you didn't get paid, you won't have the ability to create the results that you want to create. And so your alignment is the most important thing because if it's ever about money, you've already lost the game. And in the state of the world that we live in, who knows if it's even going to be here in a couple of years.
Yeah.
We don't know, but there's one thing that if you monetize correctly is guaranteed to support you forever, which is relationships. And the only way to monetize relationships is to care about people. And the only way to scale is to do the unscalable things. And trust me, I don't care what questions you have. I don't care what objections you have. We've done the unscalable things all the way up to multi-billion-dollar companies. It's able to be done when you focus on the right things, and it's always people. But it's also not just your customers. And one of the things I say to people is nobody has a marketing problem. Everybody has a relationship problem with themselves, their team, and their customers informed in that order. And so everything rolls downhill. And
Yeah.
so most of these things that we run into are just invitations to look in the mirror, forgive ourselves, and just do better and be better. It's not perfect, it's imperfect action. But no one will ever get upset when you're like, hey, I realized I overwhelmed you and I wanted to say I'm sorry. Here's what I'm making now. How's that feel? Business is also a two-way relationship, not a one-way dictatorship,
Yeah.
which means the more connected we are to our people, the faster we get results for them and for us. But you have to stay focused on what matters. And we lose that all too often. We have transactional teams. We have people that we don't go all in on. We relegate it down to their job and their function. No, no, no. These are people. These are people's lives we're playing with. This is their trauma. This is their pain. These are mistakes in their life that they've made that they don't want to be in anymore. And if you're going to take somebody's credit card to help them get out of it, you better mean I'm going to help you get out of it, even if you don't give me your credit card anymore. Because Nike's billboard doesn't say just do it, only if you wear running shoes. It says just do it, right? That's the difference that we get to make. And when you think like that and you act like that and you operate like that, everything else falls into place. But you have to hold it because the world isn't going to want you to hold it. We live in a world that's like instant gratification, get rich quick, do this now, blah, 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 blah. Oh, great. Thanks for making my job more prevalent, right? Like the more AI that pops up, the easier my life is because the more work I have, because you can never replace a human heart ever. And that's the biggest secret to business, but it's first applying it to yourself, then sharing it with your team. Because team is not I, team is we. And you should be the most humble person on your team. And trust me, my team tells me what to do more and they humble me more than anything. And they have carte blanche to veto anything I say. And I'm like, they're right. They're always right more than I am because they're not emotionally attached to it. They're not at the helm of the wheel, right? Like I trust them more than I trust myself. But then when we're together, that energy transmutes to our customers. And we have to remember that selling is just a transference of energy and confidence until somebody has enough of their own to believe it to be true. And our energy precedes us. And so if things are broken down inside the house, people are going to feel it outside the house. And so this work is from us down. And it's about like, yeah, I get to be better. Holy moly, I grew a level. But just remember, not every NFL quarterback, oh, wait, none of them complete every pass. But how a lot of people operate in business is, oh my God, I threw an interception. I'm retiring from football. No, of course not. What did I do? What worked? What didn't work? What do I do differently? What worked? What didn't work? What do I do differently? But never lose focus on the fact that the people that get ignored the most are the ones that pay our bills. They're the ones that feed our kids. They're the ones that allow us to live the lives that we have, and yet they're the ones that get neglected and gaslit the most. I can't believe they're complaining. How dare them email me? How about thank you for the feedback? How about thanks for helping me be better? How about thanks for exposing the hose that I didn't see? Change your relationship with it and watch how fast everything changes. That's what I would say.
So thank you so much, man. George. It's always a pleasure to be in the same room with you.
Oh my God, I would
Super
do this with
excited
you
to
all the
hang out
time.
more with you. You're going to Detroit, right? Going
I'm
with
not going to Detroit. I will be in Niagara Falls with a client. Greg, I told Greg he has to give me a little bit more than
more
he
notice.
nailed me at the beginning of the year and he's like, these are the event dates. I'm like, I will block them all right now. And then he's like, Detroit in 30 days. I'm like,
Like,
my
oh,
calendar's full that whole 3 weeks, bro. And I was like, I wish I could be there. So I'll be there in spirit with you guys.
okay, no worries. Well, I'll see you in Wyoming at least. So I know you're going there. So
You will
guys,
see me in Wyoming.
so grateful to have some time with you again, George. And guys online, if you like this, if you feel like this is helping you get a little bit closer to your goals, helping you level up in life, hit that like, that subscribe, that notification bell, because I want to keep adding value to you, keep giving and giving and allowing you to get a little bit closer to your goals. So thank you so much. One more time, George. It was a pleasure to share some time with
Oh, it
you.
was an honor. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it immensely.
Absolutely. It was awesome. Okay. You have a wonderful day. God bless.